So next Monday, we will have the chance to celebrate with our neighbor. Our neighbor is Rain, and we have supported her this year. I've spoken about Rain earlier in the year and have had her as a guest this summer, and our Cathedral Outreach Committee has partnered with Habitat for Humanity and other faith communities to build a home for her family. The building of the home has been completed, and now is the time we get to celebrate the joy of changing the life of our neighbor Rain as her home is dedicated on Monday the 27th. And we are all invited to attend this joyful occasion at 634 Maple Avenue, 11:30 a.m. next Monday. So write that down. This is an example of loving our neighbor through acts of service and the stewarding of our resources through giving. The letter to Galatians today teaches us that we are set free to love and serve our neighbors, and this freedom to love our neighbors can help shift our thinking about stewardship of our resources. We give because we've been freed to love one another, and every act of generosity flows from our hearts that have experienced God's generosity towards us. Paul in Galatians today echoes Jesus by teaching the entire law in this command of love your neighbor as yourself. When we love our neighbors, we live the values of our faith as taught in this letter and in the teachings of Jesus. And stewardship of our resources is this love of neighbor made tangible. Coming together to build a home with other faith communities in Lexington, partnering with Habitat for Humanity, this is a tangible example of what is possible with our resources. When we give, we're expressing this freedom to love for the benefit of the whole community. And so we can think of our stewardship as we've been going through this stewardship season this month, like sowing spiritual seeds in a garden or in a field. Those of you that garden know the faith and commitment that seeing your efforts bear fruit. This kind of spiritual sowing means stewarding resources into what endures, which can be transformed lives in our community. Stewardship is part of this spiritual sowing. It asks us to be intentional about what we plant these resources. However, sometimes the spiritual sowing, it can be hard because results aren't always immediate. We might grow weary because we can't always see those results of those efforts. And so going back to gardening, we plant those seeds in the spring, and then we wonder if anything will ever grow. But this is where our faith comes in. There's a gap between that sowing and that reaping, and this is where our faith lives in that period. Our faith in the practice of continued sowing helps us to be persistent. So growing up, I saw this kind of faith. I grew up in central Indiana next to a cornfield. So one year it was corn, one year it was soybeans, but it was all the flat land and corn everywhere. And I got to see this kind of faith in action in that sowing and harvesting. So each time a farmer went out there in the field was an act of faith. The seed would go into the ground in April, and there was trust that something was happening that you couldn't see for a long time until there was little glimmers that something was growing. So along with the summer and spring rains, the tending to it, these farmers trusted that the sun and the soil were also doing their work. They trusted the process, which then resulted in a harvest come October. And so growing up, it was always amazing to see this slow process unfold over the 6 months into seeing the end result. So our stewardship can require the same kind of persistence of our faith. This persistence is for when it can be hard to see if there will be any results. This persistence is for us to keep sowing when we're tempted to stop. And Paul says we're not to lose heart, we're to keep going. And when we need encouragement to stay faithful and continue sowing, Paul in his letter today tells us that the harvest is coming. God is faithful. And so here at Christ Church, in our giving, we're blessing our neighbors through the gift of our worship, through hospitality at breakfast, through formation in our faith with all of our formation offerings, and also in our outreach efforts of direct aid and justice. Being able to celebrate the dedication of Rain's home that we helped build with both our labor, our financial support, is part of this blessing of our neighbors. We have sowed spiritual seeds through our giving, which has a long-term impact for Rain and our family. When we give, we do so for the benefit of our community, and this sowing then multiplies in our spiritual lives. So like how gardeners or farmers continue to sow seeds each year, may we continue to keep sowing in the Spirit, as Galatians says. May our stewardship flow from that freedom to love our neighbors. May we plant these seeds intentionally in the spiritual soil, trusting in God to multiply these efforts. May we trust God with the harvest and have that persistent faith to keep going. Amen.